Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of Cannabis Tech Talks, brought to you by Polyscience. This is Patricia Miller, Managing Editor for Cannabis and Tech Today. In today's episode, we sit down with Alice Moon, a former edibles reviewer turned publicist. Her world turned upside down when she began experiencing the symptoms of Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome, an illness doctors believe is caused by heavy cannabis use. She joins us today by phone to recount her experience. I know you were working as an edible reviewer for many years, and now you've moved into PR, but how did you first become interested in the cannabis space?
I had started trimming. I was working as a waitress at a restaurant, and the hostess, mentioned that she was a trimmer, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And so then I started doing that, and I immediately, wanted to be a bud tender, and the person I was trimming for owned a dispensary, and when I had told him I wanted to be a bud tender, and he was like, oh, well, we're fully staffed. And then about an hour later, he got a phone call that their bud tender was stealing from them and was caught on camera. So then I got hired as a bud tender, and I really quickly got educated on all the medicinal benefits of it, and that is really what drove my passion in the industry, and why I have been in it for so long is because I saw the people that were coming in there to buy cannabis and all the different types of medicinal purposes it had, every walk of life. You had old patients, people with cancer, glaucoma, just all these different things. So that's what really just has driven me the whole time.
And were you using it medicinally at this point or recreationally?
I was when I first started, I was using it more in a recreational way, but then I quickly realized that it helped with my depression and my anxiety. And so I started using it medicinally and used it medicinally for a long time. It helped me with sleep, anxiety, depression, appetite. It kind of just became it just did everything for me.
Okay, I can relate to that. I know I started using it for menstrual cramps and...
Yes, that too.
Yeah, and found that it was very helpful for a lot of other things. So I can relate. So you're, as an edible reviewer, you were ingesting cannabis every day, and then you started to feel ill. Can you kind of tell me about the journey from the first time you thought something might be wrong?
Yeah, so I had started randomly throwing up in 2016, and it was just very spur of the moment. I would just puke and then I would feel better.
And was it usually just after using, or was it any time?
Anytime. I couldn't find any correlation. It wasn't immediately after using.
Okay.
Because I remember quite a few times I was driving when it happened, and I never drive high. So definitely would be at least 5 hours minimum afterwards. But yeah, so I would just randomly throw up. Doctors said that I had acid reflux. I definitely had heartburn. And so I changed my diet for a few months, and that didn't help at all. And, then I quit drinking because alcohol started affecting me differently. One drink was making me vomit excessively, and I thought maybe that's just staying in my body and making me really sick too. And I didn't get better with that either. And so it progressively got worse and worse. My throwing up was, just sporadic and random, and then it started turning into every few weeks, and then every week, and then it became more and more frequent, to the point where it became a serious issue. Early 2018, I went to New York with my mom for vacation, and I was puking on the streets of New York. I had a frozen hot chocolate thing, one of those I don't know, it was that Serendipity 3, it's notorious thing, and that's what I threw up. And looking back on it, now we've learned that there is naturally occurring cannabinoids in chocolate. So I was already experiencing, CHS symptoms, and me having that chocolate just set it off.
Wow, that's incredible and horrifying. Yeah, I can't. That's awful. And then so you'd been going to the doctor at this point, and when you finally were, I know CHS still isn't considered a diagnosis, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So, after the New York trip, my mom was like, "Okay, we have to figure this out. Like, this is just serious." And the doctor I saw actually had a 3 to 6 month wait list. Like, she's a specialist, a GI specialist, and my mom called, and thankfully she had a cancellation that week. And I really think the universe was like looking out for me, because otherwise I would have had to wait a very long time. And the doctor said quit cannabis for 3 months. And one of the questions she had asked me was about hot baths, and if I find relief when I'm taking hot baths. And subconsciously, I had been obsessively taking hot baths. It's something that like I was just doing that for like 2 years, hot baths a lot, and I wasn't even correlating the fact that it was helping my nausea. I just knew that I felt really good when I was in the hot bath. And so, she had asked me that question, and said she didn't want to run any tests on my body until I quit using cannabis for a bit. And I didn't want to hear that. I was like, no, do a bunch of tests. She didn't want to put my body through that. So I said I was going to quit, and I was like, I'm just going to go have one last night of fun. And as you read, I went to what I consider my last supper. It was a 5-course meal. It was infused, but it was low dose. I think it was only like 10 or 15 milligrams throughout the whole meal. But I was smoking as well, and one of my favorite brands was there, and they have really high THC flower, so I was smoking that. And that dinner triggered my first really severe episode of CHS, which lasted 14 days. In that time, I went to urgent care twice, and on my second urgent care visit, the doctor was like, we have to get your doctor to run tests on you. And so he called in an emergency order with her, so that way she would go and do all the tests. And, it did almost every test you could possibly do to my body, and everything came back saying that I was normal. So it was like, we narrowed it down and eliminated all the other options. The only thing that didn't get done to me was I didn't have a tube stuck up my butt. Like, that's legit. Everything else, they were doing to me. And so, that really drove home the fact that, it was cannabis. And, those 14 days were an absolute nightmare, because this was my first severe episode. Wasn't aware of any of this with CHS. Wasn't really able to even find answers, and I felt like I was dying. Every day, it was just like, when am I going to stop throwing up? Because it was non-stop throwing up. If I had a small sip of water, I was throwing it up. There was nothing I could hold down. And I even passed out in my front yard one day because I was puking in my front yard because I could no longer hug the toilet. So I was just constantly just having to go there and just lay in the grass. And one day, a neighbor, they just came up can I help you? And I just burst out into tears, because it was no one knows how to help me. There's nothing they could do. That was just an extreme moment of helplessness. And I spent so much money on food too, just ordering delivery every day, trying to just see if there was something I could hold down. And nothing. 14 days, and it was extremely scary. I wish I would have allowed my friend to take a picture of me, because she was like, you really need to document this. But I was just so embarrassed by how deathly ill I looked. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror, because it was just really, really scary.
Yeah, well, and how could you have known at that time, the gravity of what you were going through, and that you would wind up talking about it for the next several years, I mean,
True.
Having that kind of foresight would be pretty, especially when you're so sick.
That's true, yeah. I never expected my career to lead me this way, that's for sure.
Yeah. And how much did you feel like your doctors understood cannabis, or, I mean, did they have to know about cannabis in order to make this unofficial diagnosis?
I don't know the extent of what that doctor knows about it, but she was aware that cannabis can affect the digestive tract. And so, she had mentioned that there is information out there about it messing with that. And so, you know, I didn't really fully believe that when she had said it, because, you know, we know that it does help with a lot of things. So it just, at the time, I didn't even fully, like, accept that. Now I do accept it, but I haven't gone back to see her, you know, the wait list and then also the cost. I've just seen other doctors since then. And the urgent care doctor, he didn't know anything about even the difference between CBD and THC, honestly. And he really didn't seem like he cared at all. But at urgent care, all they did was they gave me an IV, and they gave me some anti-nausea medicine. And while I was on the IV, I wasn't throwing up, but I also wasn't, like, drinking anything. And as soon as I would, like, leave, I would start puking. So the IV was just, like, a temporary thing. And that's another thing. Like, when I got the IV, my veins were so, like, dried up and shriveled up. It took them over 20 minutes to even get an IV in me. And I am not a needle person at all, so I, like, that was just, you know, another stressful part of this. Yeah. And that was my first episode of 3.
Oh my gosh, how horrifying. And
every cultivator knows that facility design can make or break your grow. So why not choose the team with over 15 years of experience in the industry? Cerna Cultivation Technologies provides floor plan and architectural services, comprehensive HVACD equipment, lighting and benching, and so much more, all within your budget. It's time to grow your way. Go to Cerna.com. That's SURNA.com to learn more.
I know you experienced some, I guess we can call them side effects of CHS, but really they're sort of a result of the dehydration. But you experienced, was it a hernia and some lesions, or?
That was after my third episode. So the third episode lasted 16 days, and I had used hemp-derived CBD. So I'll just backtrack a little bit. So after the first episode, I quit using cannabis for 3 months. And then I started lightly smoking again, and I was doing pesticide-free weed, just because, you know, everyone's like, it's pesticides. So I gave that a try, and then my symptoms did come back, and that episode only lasted 4 days. And then I had taken some CBD during that time, because people were like, just try it, maybe it'll counteract it. And I don't know if that CBD did help me have a short episode or not, but that episode was only 4 days. And so then I used CBD for a few months, and right before Christmas, I was flying home, and I was on my period, so I took more CBD than I had been taking, and that had started the 16-day episode. And so that one, I had 2 urgent care visits, an at-home nurse visit, and then landed in the hospital and was hospitalized for 4 days. And that's when I got 2 ulcers, a hernia, and a bacteria infection in my gut.
Oh my gosh.
And so the healing process from that was quite some time too, because just like them having to do an endoscopy, you know, and like it's just I had trouble walking for like a week or maybe some 2 weeks. It was just, I was in so much pain after the fact. But I am happy to say that I've gained 30 pounds since January, and I'm still a very slim person. But like I've, you know, finally put on more weight than I had even lost, so I'm like got my health like back in order. But you know, that I was down to 108 pounds, and right now I'm like 135, I think. So you know, I'm still very skinny, but it's a nightmare syndrome. It's so terrible. And I am grateful that, you know, I was able to even go to urgent care and to the doctor and all that, because there's some people who don't have the financial means to do that, you know?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, or wouldn't feel comfortable even discussing the idea of their cannabis use. You know, which I'm sure is why this has gone so underreported up until this time.
Yeah, you know, people are definitely afraid to talk about it. And when I was in the hospital, the doctors, like, my emergency room doctor didn't know the difference between CBD and THC, and then they were like asking me like, well, how do you use CBD? And I was trying to even like say, hey, this is what's going on with me, but the doctors at the hospital, they didn't want to hear it, and after the fact, I think it was a good thing because they didn't want to put cannabis on my record, because then the health insurance, it wouldn't have covered everything it covered. So if they would have like diagnosed me with CHS, since it's not like a recognized thing yet, my health insurance wouldn't have approved of all the tests that got done. So it was actually good that they didn't put the blame on weed and for my hospital stay. Because it was nonstop tests getting done there, and I did have to get potassium in my IV once, and that is the most painful thing that I've probably ever experienced in my life. It was just a shocking pain from my fingertips up to my shoulder, and like I was just crying for like an hour. It was extremely painful, and I was at the hospital by myself the whole time, but I kind of wanted to be. It was just, when I'm that sick, it was just embarrassing for me. A few days before I was in the hospital, like I had to ask a friend to come give me a bath because I was just so weak I couldn't even take a bath. And so those things are all like, it just feels a little embarrassing to be that weak as a human being. So I was just kind of like in the hospital going through that pain of the IV like by myself, and that was like one moment where I was like, dang, maybe I should have just let someone come be here with me,
Yeah, that's really isolating.
Yeah, but I do think that this syndrome isn't rare. I think it's just not documented. People aren't talking about it to their doctors, or doctors don't know about it. And then another issue is some doctors are too quick to diagnose people with this when they don't actually have it. And so then there's people who are saying online, well, like, I got diagnosed this, and then I ended up finding out something else is wrong, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's just so misunderstood. And, there's also then a handful of people who've had their gallbladders removed because doctors didn't know about CHS. And so literally organs removed. I've had 3 people that I've talked to personally that have gone through that.
Wow, that's incredible. And, some doctors may not mention it for the insurance reason, like you said, which is something that we don't talk about enough, but being able to insure cannabis-related illnesses and cannabis for medicinal purposes is still a big issue. But that's kind of a whole nother tangent. So, but I know you talked about flare-ups, or at least I read about that in the Business Insider article you sent over, and said that the condition can cause, or syndrome can cause, flare-ups that are difficult to predict. Maybe you can help me understand what a flare-up is. Like, would it be when you use cannabis, then it would be a flare-up, or is that something that can just keep happening for months after you've stopped using it?
Yeah, so I've never used the verbiage flare-up. Maybe the writer Aaron used that with part of what I was saying, but
okay.
Because I kind of use the word episode more so, but flare-ups. So I'm in a Facebook group with thousands of people, and I guess what they would define as a flare-up is just going through, having the symptoms again. Since I try very carefully to not have any symptoms again, I guess I do still have flare-ups. I went to an event the other night where there's a lot of cannabis smoke, and so that made me really nauseous, really burpy, and so I put capsaicin cream on my stomach, and just had to sleep with that on my stomach all night long to ensure that I didn't throw up and get any worse. And some people have flare-ups from eating chocolate, or having coffee, or eating food with black pepper. Those 3 foods all have naturally occurring cannabinoids, and so there are some people who literally can't even touch those foods without getting sick. And secondhand, to a lot of people, and there are people who are still using, and it's people think I can take a break and I can go back to it, but really you can't, and so it's just a matter of when their symptoms are going to come back. It's not if. And so I guess people might refer to when it comes back, that might be a flare up for them too. Some people are only throwing up for like 2 days. I consider that an episode because I just think it's really severe, but some people are just like in the routine of like, okay, every 4 months I'm just going to puke for 2 days and then I'll go back to using weed.
Wow, that sounds like an awful routine.
Yeah. Because
oh, I'm sorry. You cut out a little bit.
But it's really hard. Since cannabis does so many things for so many people, it's just really hard for them to walk away from it.
I could see that, absolutely. And I'm shocked that other cannabinoids, I mean, it makes sense. It just wasn't an aspect that I had considered. And can you handle cannabis? Maybe you can explain to me how it differs from sort of like an allergic reaction to something.
Yeah, I can't even handle the secondhand smoke. It makes me sick. So that I've had to adjust my whole lifestyle because I used to go to events nonstop, and now if I'm going to be somewhere where there's a lot of smoke, like honestly, I just can't be there. I have to leave. Some people are able to lightly smoke, like maybe hit it like once a day or every 3 days or something like that. I don't condone anyone like continuing to use cannabis if they have this syndrome, because you never know how bad your episode or flare up might actually be when it occurs. But yeah, I can't touch it at all. No CBD either. And I did, I was in that cabin doing a lot of research, and a study that I read, it said, as we know, that CBD can counteract the effects of THC, but too much CBD can actually make things worse. So with my nausea and stuff, like taking more CBD, that's just bad. But then CBG can counteract that CBD. So there is like the possibility of maybe there is a cannabinoid that could work with this, but I sure as hell am not being a guinea pig anymore and trying to see if CBG could work for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am just like, I can't touch any cannabinoid, and I have noticed like if I have too much coffee, then I can feel nauseous, and I don't think it's the caffeine. I totally think it's the cannabinoids.
Wow, that's incredible. And let me process that for a minute, because that's such a huge swath, of your life that's changed.
Oh yeah, it's gnarly. I'm not going to pretend that I'm happy all the time, because I sure as hell am not.
Right.
And like, I try to get through it, but it's really hard. It's really hard. Like, especially because I was using it for anxiety and depression as well, and I don't want to turn to pharmaceuticals. In the past, I had taken Xanax before I found cannabis, and like Xanax was great, but also I understand that could be addicting, and I don't want to. I don't even want to do that. So I don't do anything.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a real conundrum. I took Lexapro in my youth, and then when I discovered the benefits of cannabis, that was off the table, which really changed my life in a positive way. So I can imagine the struggle. Alice, what have you found most surprising about this whole experience, other than cannabis can make you sick?
I think the way people react to it, I think it's very surprising how negative people are about this syndrome, how mean they are, and how much they don't believe that it's real. I think that it's a huge problem within the cannabis community that people are choosing to experience and thousands of other people's experience, just for the sake of like trying to protect the image of the plant. Mm-hmm. That's definitely the most surprising, is just people not believing me, and even people that I have known for years whose product I had reviewed in the past and not believing me. That's definitely hurtful. I'm also just surprised that more research isn't being done. I just read over 40 studies last week, and at the end of each one it says, but we need more research to be done to have a exact conclusion. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm reading that, I'm like, yep, okay, we need more research to be done. Who's going to do it? When's someone going to do it? We have this vape pen crisis happening right now. The government's reacting to it. People are paying attention to it, but people have died from CHS, and people are suffering with CHS right now, and no one's paying attention to it, and it really blows my brain. It's just like, what's going on here? Why?
Yeah, and sort of the issue of putting the cart before the horse, allowing it to be prescribed medically and recreationally and all these things without giving us the ability to research it properly.
Yeah, and some research that people have done on CHS, they couldn't get the people that they were studying to stay off of cannabis. People, they don't want to quit. So it's a lot of these studies, they're we couldn't even do anything past 6 months because people, they just don't want to quit. So yeah, that's another aspect of it, is just finding people even willing to be studied and to quit. But yeah, it's just such a gnarly experience, and I really wouldn't wish it on anyone. Just the suffering of going through the episode, and then just the aftermath of it. It's completely changed my whole life. As much as I hate it, I feel like it happened to me for a reason, just that way there could be a voice to this, somebody who was already developed in the industry, who, I'm kind of relentless, where I'm like, no, you're going to listen to me, you're not going to ignore me. And so I think that's kind of why the universe, made it happen to me, so that way I could help find a cure for it.
Well, it's wonderful that you've had such a positive outlook, considering how terrible the entire thing has been. Yeah, and what do you most want people to understand about this condition?
It's not the end of the world for cannabis. It's just a side effect, and everything in life has potential side effects. So I want people to know that just because this happens, this doesn't negate all of the positives to cannabis. This is just a potential side effect that can occur. And I don't want anyone to live in fear about consumption. I just want people to recognize the symptoms if they do occur, so that way they don't become as sick as I did.
Well, that's powerful. And I guess, lastly, is there anything that you learned from all of those studies that maybe you want me to take away from our conversation?
Yeah, I'm still trying to dive in and connect some dots, but there are... something to do with the blood flow and the temperature of the body is to do with this. So first of all, the TRPV1 receptor is the only receptor in our body that is a capsaicin receptor. And so it's believed that receptor was being messed with DHS, and that's why hot baths and capsaicin cream work for people throwing up. It's because the heat turns that receptor back on. That receptor is in charge of regulating the digestive system, and it's also connected to the brain. And so I strongly believe the theory that the TRPV1 receptor is getting shut off by too many cannabinoids. And then from what I've read, there's also just something to do with blood flow and body temperature that has to do with this, because there are some people who find relief by running a lot. And there's even a documented case of one patient who ran for 15 hours. He developed a nasty side effect from that. I don't remember the name of it. It starts with an R. And doctors think that it could be because it's doing something with body temperature, and that the running, it's stopping the throwing up, and it's doing something with the TRPV1 receptor. So it's all just very interesting, and I feel like I'm really close to connecting the dots. I feel like I'm very, very close to it. It's just I'm almost there. And I think with just a little bit more research, we can get those dots connected.
I'm so thankful that you're doing that and taking the time to help people connect those dots, because I think it's such a busy world, and it's hard for people to do the research on everything that maybe they need to on their own. So having an advocate like you in their corner researching and looking into it, I think is probably going to help a lot of people.
I hope so. And one thing about the TRPV1 receptor, when I was reading about this, this receptor was discovered in the 90s, and so all the initial studies that were done on rats or mice, and they don't have the same system as we do as far as throwing up, and so the original studies and all this stuff on this were all void. They couldn't use it because they realized after the fact oh yeah, these animals don't act like humans completely. And so this is TRPV1 receptors being studied outside of cannabis, nothing to do with cannabis, and yet there's still lacking information on that part of our body. So it's not just cannabis that we're lacking information on, it's just our body in general. There's not enough information on.
That's fascinating. I spoke with the Cannabis Nurses Network, and they said the same thing, that many doctors are not even, and nurses are not educated on the endocannabinoid system at all during medical school. And I thought that was horrifying. I mean, it's an entire system of the body that really is under-researched.
It's mind-blowing. It's really mind-blowing, the fact that I know more than some doctors do about the body.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really, really just want doctors everywhere to just know about this so we can just get to the bottom of it.
Really, truly. If you enjoyed today's episode of Cannabis Tech Talks, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Apple iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. You can pick up our most recent issue on Barnes & Noble newsstands or grab a copy for free on cannatechtoday.com. That's all for this episode of Cannabis Tech Talks, brought to you by Polyscience. Until next time, stay elevated.
Hey, hello, I'm Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. Wait, you didn't think people would know who I am? Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. No, hey, I don't talk like that. You want me to sell this? Buy it. Try Durachill or else. If you want something really nice in your laboratory, buy Durachill. You can't go wrong.